Hello, lovelies. Caroline here from CarolineLam.com, and today I'm delighted to be talking to fellow business coach Julie Wolk. Julie helps coaches, consultants, and healers build rooted and blossoming businesses modeled on the way nature works. Julie, we're so excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Caroline. It's really nice to be here.
So, Julie, you talk a lot in your work about getting off the hamster wheel and tuning into nature's rhythms. And that's one of the main reasons I reached out to you, because I love that message. And I know that it will really resonate with the ladies of my audience. But in your words, tell us a bit more about your business and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a lot of business coaches out there, a lot of, and there's kind of a dominant, mainstream way of looking at building a business, which is similar to Western society in general, which is this idea that we have to just kind of keep on going and producing. And in this very kind of inhumane, unnatural way, there's this kind of culture, an obsession of productivity. And it's across the board, but we're using business as an example. And so where the reason that I'm doing this work in the way that I do it is because I really truly believe that we need to eject ourselves from this dominant paradigm that says we always have to do more and be more and have more, which is exhausting, both on a personal level and it has negative impacts on a planetary level, right? It's like the same pattern of consumption where we just take more and more. So my stand is that we need to eject ourselves from that paradigm of the productivity hamster wheel and actually slow down and come back to a more natural, like sane, slow, thoughtful, methodical way of doing business and doing life in general, but in particular business, because that's what we're talking about today. So I come to business coaching and helping, smaller service-based business owners to really look at nature and look inward to our own nature to help create businesses and grow businesses that are actually feel natural and sustainable and resilient and able to grow more naturally.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. And so, I know your story, but for the purposes of the audience, tell us a bit about what inspired you to go in this direction with your business.
Sure. Well, I feel lucky enough to be able to combine what I feel like are my gifts with my passions, which I think is a pretty good model for creating a business. My passion and my long time love is nature and being in nature since I was young. And my career's always followed a path that had something to do with the environment. It used to be more activism and advocacy based, fighting to stop toxic chemicals from going into the environment, and protecting forests. And at some point about 10 years ago, I shifted out of that and shifted into creating an earth-based, nature-based nonprofit organization that's all about reconnecting people to the earth in a more kind of paradigm shifting way, like actually getting people outdoors into nature. And so I have this long thread of this desire to not just protect the environment, but to reconnect humans with the natural world. And that feels like my passion, my purpose. And then on the gifts and skills side, I'm really good at like putting structure around a vision, just kind of what I do naturally. It's just, okay, we've got an idea here. How do we make this happen? How do we, what are the steps? How does this work? And when I co-founded a nonprofit about 10 years ago and played that role of, okay, so we've got this great idea. How do we turn this into a thriving business that serves people and pays its staff and all that? So this business now basically brings those two pieces together. But the key piece and the key difference is that when the nonprofit work was incredible, and I felt very on purpose doing that work. And after about 7 years of it, I was in such a state of, really a burnout that because I was working so hard to make this organization work. I was caught in that hamster wheel. And granted, there were legitimately a lot of things that called my attention, but it was also that I was on that ride, and I was just in the habit of having to do more, having to do better, having to do perfect. And after some time, it just became clear that it wasn't sustainable for me. And so I ended up leaving that work, which it's pretty ironic, right? It was like a whole organization that we developed in order to reconnect humans with the natural world. And here I am, like, spinning off and, obsessing about spreadsheets and not outside managing programs and being with people. So, it's ironic, but maybe not all that surprising that I got burnt out. And then, after taking some time off and having some extended time, just really slowing down and being in nature, it just became clear to me that the next iteration of what I did, my next business, was going to be combining those gifts, like putting the structure around the vision, but also really integrating the ecological piece of it to a way greater extent, where we're like, well, I'm not going to do it this way again. I'm not going to grind myself into the ground in this kind of robotic, like, I can work all the time mentality, and instead started integrating this model of kind of relying more on the natural cycles, and in particular honoring the ebb and the flow of our businesses.
I love that so much. And yeah, I mean, you talk about it being ironic, but I think for so many of the women that I work with, they go into business not because of a love of business, but for a love of what they do, whether that's healing or coaching, or, I think we probably share similar audience. And then they find that they're ground down with the daily business of running their businesses. And so I'm really curious, and I know that the women watching this would love to know, like, is there anything you can share with us, like some key principles, or that really kind of allow us to see what you mean by integrating that nature with the work?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first one I just mentioned, what it's all based on is really this idea of natural productivity, of generating natural productivity instead of trying to access this sort of, what I kind of call robotic productivity, this hamster wheel productivity. And the main piece there is that every natural cycle has phases. It has a resting phase and it has an active phase. So if you look, for every summer there's a winter, and for every day there's a night, and for every elderly person there's a young child, right? There's always these polarities in nature, and we just sort of forget that we have those too, right? We have the rest. We have that time that we need to rest and we need to regenerate. And so, part of what I actively promote, and I have a whole entire retreat built around this, is taking that time. And it doesn't have to be in the dark of winter, but it's nice when it can match up in that way. But taking this time every year, really smaller versions of it every season, every week, every day. But if you're looking at the cycle of the year, taking time to step back away from our business, to slow down and get out of those day-to-day weeds that you were talking about, and spend the time really dreaming into where am I at right now? Like, what worked last year and what didn't? What's changed for me? Where am I at right now? How do I want to grow my business differently this year? Or similarly, whatever, just giving it some thought, and then making a more aligned plan for our businesses from that place, from a place of having slowed down, ideally spent some time in nature, and really listening for what wants to come through. Because it's really hard to get visionary and strategic when you're in the weeds, when you're down there every day. You just kind of lose sight. And then after a while, you're like, what am I doing? Or like, you have a business that you don't like or something, it's like, so taking that time, it's hard for people because we're on the wheel, but scheduling that time in your calendar to pull back and have that bigger view. So to me, that the principle of honoring the ebb is a really big one that we just as a society, like, basically ignore. So that's kind of the foundational one.
Yeah.
But there's many.
Well, Yeah, we'll dive into more, but just to speak to that one a little bit, because I think that one is so fundamentally important, because the truth is that we do have the ebb and flow, and we don't honor the ebb, but also we make the ebb. I think, I definitely have found it in my business, and I see it with the women I work with. We make the ebb mean something it doesn't mean, so we make it mean something about us, about our abilities in our business. So I love, like, this just feels like a massive permission slip to me, for the women watching, that, it's not only essential, it's not only a fundamental truth that, the ebb occurs, but, that you have to honor it. And in doing so, you allow the cycle to progress more naturally. I mean, one way that I've done it in my business, it was interesting hearing you talk about the seasons, is for the longest time before I gave birth to my son, I used to use my menstrual cycle, because I had those phases of ebb and flow very clear to me, that, there were times in my cycle when I just didn't feel like being on a coaching call, for example. I was much happier to write a blog post, or, to create something behind the scenes, rather than be that kind of forward facing, external energy. So I just love it. And I just wanted to kind of, come in there, because I just think I think that's one of the biggest issues that I see for many people starting out in business, that they don't get that happens. And so they start to kind of, believe that the ebb means something.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, thanks for saying that. I mean, people believe, well, first, when they're starting out, I think people believe that they can't stop until they get to some point, right? And then that's when people can get burnt out really easily. But guess what? There's no point you're going to get to where it's all done. So you have to pace yourself. Yeah. You have to take those moments of rest and build them into the schedule. Because like you said, it actually, the ebb actually creates the flow. If you think about waves in the ocean, like the ebb comes in and then the flow goes out. Like it provides the energy and the juice and the creativity for the flow to happen again. Because I'm not anti-flow, right? Yeah. Like, we need the flow, we need the energy. There's moments when we're going for it, but those moments are fewer and far between if we haven't taken time for that welling up that happens in the ebb.
Yeah, I love it. And something that occurred to me as you were talking then, a mantra that I often say to myself in my business is slow and steady wins the race. And although, again, I don't really believe it's about winning the race, but for me, it's that, I think of it as a marathon rather than a sprint. If I try and do too much too fast, I'm going to head for burnout, and this project will be, it will die before it's even started. So yeah, that one always reminds me to just kind of slow down and that kind of steady movement, rather than, it's like you say, it's unsustainable to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of leads to another principle, which is that, well, first of all, this is just kind of a little tidbit, which is that everything in business, and probably in most things in life, take longer than we want them to or expect them to. And business always takes, everything I try to do in my business, I'm like, why is this taking so long? And now I'm just kind of like, oh, it's just going to take like a year if I thought it's going to take 6 months. Yeah. Like my website, for example, it's just things to take longer. But the principle here is we're going around a cycle. Like, it's not a linear process where you go from point A to point B, and then all of a sudden here we are with a thriving business and you're done, right? It's actually a slow, iterative, evolutionary process, and circles move, right? Like it's there's motion. And so a good strategy for growing a business is to, and this is really, I live in California. This is, in the startup world, there's something called the lean startup. And there's this idea that you prototype and iterate, and you do something small and you put it out there. Yeah. Right? And it's the same in evolution. You put something out there, not the big, huge thing that you've been dreaming of for 10 years, but the small version, and you get feedback and you see how it works and you build on that. And then you grow and you adapt and you change over time, instead of expecting like, oh, I'm going to design this coaching program and I'm going to get 20 people in it and it's a year-long thing and I'm going to just do that all in 1 year. It's like, what test the concept, do something small, bring people on board, and then it's going to be better that way because you're going to be getting feedback from the environment, right? And then you can adapt and evolve and change in a way that makes sense for your clients and for yourself.
Yeah, I think I think it's Jeff Walker who talks about hope marketing. How people go away and spend ridiculous amounts of time making something, building something perfect, and then without talking to anyone or any feedback or any testing, and then put it out there, and then it's crickets. So yeah, I love that idea. One thing that I really want to touch on with you, because I just hearing the words make me like breathe a sigh of relief, but you talk about rooted, like deeply rooted businesses. And I just, without even really knowing exactly what you mean by that, it just feels so good to me. And so I'd love you to talk to us a bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. Well, another principle that we kind of operate around here is this idea that you can't fruit if you don't root. And there's stages to this cycle, right? And we start in this visionary place of the seed, right? Like a seed has a lot of potential. It's sort of unknown. It's also the DNA. It's a blueprint for a plant. And the seed is like the vision that we have for our life and for our business. And so we spend that time in that, in those quieter phases, in those ebb phases, dreaming into, what do I want to create? What is this life I want to live? And what is the business that will support that honors my gifts and my skills and my passions and my purpose? And so you have this seed, right? And then from there, it ecologically, a seed grows roots down into the earth. And then of course it sprouts up, it grows, it fruits, all that, right? But right now we're at this point where there's a seed, there's an idea, basically a vision, and it needs to have a root structure to support it. And so the root structure in a business, and I'm sure people have heard all these words before, but to put it into this ecological circle context, the roots of your business are the things that support your business. They help your business, they help support the seed to grow, the vision to grow, right? And so that it's in alignment with what you want to create in your life. And so you end up creating a business that supports your vision in your life instead of a business that kind of drains you and takes and saps your energy. And so these roots are things like your niche and your message to the world and your methodology, how you do your work and how you package it up into offers and programs and things and sell it. It's these kind of core foundational building blocks, but I refer to them as roots. But they're these pieces that if your tree isn't rooted with these, it makes it really hard to do like pretty much everything else in your business. So if you're not clear on your niche, on like, who do I serve? What do I help them with? How do I do it differently than every other coach or whoever out there? If you don't know that stuff, it makes it really hard to market, right? It's like awkward to talk about your business when you're not really clear exactly what it does or what you're offering to people while you're selling to people. So when you have that clarity, then your business can grow and thrive. You can go out and talk about it and market and offer and have people say yes and do the work that you're meant to do. But when the roots are a tree without roots, just kind of like doesn't work. So that's you can't fruit if you don't root concept.
It will blow over with a good wind, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. What would you say though for any women watching who struggle with the niche and the message piece? Because I think it's something that it requires some effort to kind of come up with the roots that you're describing. Do you have anything that you would say to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first thing is that exactly what I said before about iterating. It really, really applies to your niche and your message in particular. It applies to every aspect of your business, but there's this kind of misleading thing out there you see in the coaching world, like, oh, pick your niche, or have someone pick your niche for you. That's even worse. But like, as though you could just like pick your niche and be like, this is my niche and ready to go and build a whole business around it. I mean, some people can do that. And especially if it's a very simple business with a product and it's not like, you're not a healer coach person who's like using their natural inherent beauty and gifts to heal people, right? It's a whole different thing when we're doing in the kind of work industry that we're in. So there has to be patience to let it evolve. Like you can't just pick it.
Yeah.
And yet you can do work to, you can do the kind of inquiry work to help figure out what you're aiming toward. And so I think I have a course called The Roots of Business, because this stuff is so key. And there's the first module of it is all about digging into that niche question, like who do I serve, and really getting into the history of that, like, well, why those people and not these people, and how does it feel when I do this versus that, and really kind of digging in to help clarify as much as possible who we're meant to serve, how we're meant to help them, what's unique about what we do.
Yeah.
And then as with the iterating thing, you put something out there, right? You can always change your website. That's easy. You put something out there and you do it. You just try it the way that it is. And you learn more from actually doing, because especially if you're really early phase, if you haven't worked with a lot of clients, don't expect to just pick your niche, like you have to work with people for a while and really learn what your niche is, and kind of like unroot it, like get to the root of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. The other thing that I love about these roots is that what I see a lot of people struggle with, and I definitely have in the past, is when it comes to marketing our business, if we don't have the roots in place, then we almost feel like we're just marketing ourselves. It's kind of like, oh, hey, here I am, I'm a coach or a healer, and I do this thing. But when you go deep on the elements that you're discussing, the roots, things like point of view, your messaging, your niche, then it gives you so much content to talk about that doesn't feel like you're selling yourself. It feels like you're talking about something substantial. This business then takes on a life of its own rather than feel like it's like you can have some separation from you and your business. That's been my experience with this work anyway. I don't know what you think.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really interesting way to put it. Absolutely. It gives some separation. It gives you a body of work. It becomes a little less personal too, and yeah, no, I think that's great. Totally makes sense to me. Yeah.
And so I'm interested to know, Julie, like in terms of your business, because you went from working, as you mentioned, a not-for-profit organization to building your own business. What, if anything, did you struggle with in the early days of your business?
Well, probably the biggest thing was just this habit of working too hard and trying to keep myself, especially, when you're really excited about something too, and everything feels aligned and there's a lot of energy to create and to do. And to me, there's place where I need to recognize when there's this sort of natural energy to do things. And then when I'm sort of starting to cross that line into obsession or into too much work and the possibility for burnout. So I think and then that's also, that's where my work is too. I'm like a Capricorn, goal setting, let's do this. That's kind of my natural bent. And over the years, I've relaxed a ton around that, but it's still my natural tendency. So part of it is just continuously watching my own patterns and habits around that kind of more, let's make it all, let's finish it all now, let's get it all done now, kind of attitude. So that's a piece for me. It's ongoing. You teach what you need to learn, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, I think the up and the down of especially in the beginning, but even still happens, 4 or 5 years in, there's the great months and the less great months. And there's the kind of getting used to, like, over time, okay, this is going to work out. And having some sort of, backup, or, I think if I had any advice for newer business owners, it's to not have to put everything on your little baby business to try to support you in X amount of time. Like, okay, I'm going to be, making 6 figures in a year from now. Kind of unrealistic for most people. Even making half that in a year is unrealistic for a lot of people. So just being practical about having some other income source when you're first starting something out, because to put that much pressure on a little sprout seedling of a business is challenging. So I was able to have like a consulting gig that sort of helped me bridge between the old business and the new business, which was really helpful. And I wasn't like, I didn't love it, but it worked for a year, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
No, I think it's really important. I shared a post recently, actually, exactly about that, bridge jobs, you know, and how there should be no shame in it, because I think there's so many messages out there at the moment online, you know, that kind of feed this idea that we can make six figures and it can happen in 6 months and all of this stuff. And I think, you know, it's one of the things I stand against in my business. And, you know, I know you do, and it's why you're here and I'm talking to you. And so for me, it's a really important message to share that with the women, to say, you know, there's no shame in having a job that supports your business, and not putting all of that pressure on, like you say, on this, you know, this blossoming, budding seed that, you know, you can't put that much pressure on it, you know, when it's in those early stages. One thing that I just wanted to ask you if you had any advice for, because something that I see, because there's kind of two common issues that a lot of business owners face, either this issue of working too hard, and I can relate to that one, and kind of pushing too much. And then also something that I've encountered, and I've had it in the past with myself, is, you know, when we feel like the energy isn't there, or we're in a state of ebb, we kind of retreat so much from our business that we lose momentum, and we're not consistent, for example. So I just wondered if you had any words of advice for that, because that message of honoring the ebb, which I totally agree with and think is super important, I think can sometimes be misconstrued by some people who think, okay, well, the energy is not there, I'm not feeling it today, so I'm not going to show up for my business, you know? So what would you say to that?
That's a great question. You know, I mean, part of it is just that definition of ebb. I think there are times when we really do just need to stop, you know, completely or almost completely. And that might be for a week, or, you know, a couple weeks, or for some, you know, I took a 6-month sabbatical after I got burnt out in the last business. So sometimes a true stopping is necessary, and we need to, you know, listen closely for when that's really true. Like if you keep trying to do something and you kind of keep hitting the wall, at some point you're kind of like, maybe I just need to stop for a little while. Right. So I think there's some legitimate moments when the full stop is necessary. And then you mentioned a good way, I think, to think about kind of the ebbs and flows that just happen in, you know, over a day or a week or a month, which is that there's certain activities that feel better in certain moments and times. And it might be seasonal, or it might be just, you know, your own internal flow. Like, oh, usually in the fall, I'm feeling really energized to do this kind of thing. And so that's a good time for me to run my program. Right. But if you're in one of those kind of more ebbier states, then think about, because marketing consistency is important, right? Marketing is like, it's like the energy, the sap that like flows through the tree, right? It's you have to kind of keep, in most businesses, you need to continue making people aware of what you're doing and having them flow in. So can we think of ways to do that actually feel natural for us during that state, during that more ebb moment? Like you were saying, is it writing versus speaking? So still making a commitment to doing something that feels in alignment, that still helps move you toward your goals. Yeah. And if you're in that really kind of like really slow, and things seem like they're really slowing down, I mean, that might actually be a good time to do some bigger picture visioning and strategizing, and asking that question, like, how aligned am I in what I'm doing? Is there something I need to change or shift so that I can find that natural purpose energy source again, right? There's the way, like we talked about, when you're aligned, there's some natural energy that flows through. When you're misaligned, there's kind of a blockage there. And perhaps that's something that's going on too, without us being totally cognizant of it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that advice. And something that I do if I'm feeling, Ebby, I'm going to take it, I like it, is, I might read. So for example, like, there's always like a ton of business books I want to read. Like at the minute on my Kindle, I've got Tad Hargrave's Point of View Marketing, which we've talked about before. And, I don't get time in the day to day to read that. There's always kind of this pile of things. So if I'm feeling really kind of just, funky and there's the natural cycles of our business that you talk about, and the seasonal, shifts that we see, throughout the year. But there are those up and downs. Maybe we had a bad night's sleep. Maybe we just, we're tired or whatever it might be. And so for me, I like to, use those times to either go back to kind of visioning and looking at my business, bigger picture, stepping out of it to look in, because so often we're in, like you call it, in the weeds. Is that what you said? Yeah. Which I love. And so, yeah, I think that's really great advice. So we're going to start to wrap up in the interest of time, but I just wondered, it's been amazing to talk to you, and I'm going to share your cycle with the women, and obviously all the ways in which they can find out more about the work you do, because it's so wonderful. And I just wondered what parting words of wisdom you would leave to, in particular, female entrepreneurs who are at the earlier stages of their journey with building a business.
Yeah. Well, we've covered quite a few of the basics. I think a big one is patience, and just really getting that this it takes time, and to really normalize the fact that the vast majority of people are not growing businesses as quickly as they would like you to believe in their Facebook ads. And it's just like, it's so damaging, because it just promotes, again, this culture of having to do things more and quickly. And a lot of those people who've built businesses in that way end up getting burned out or changing their business model. And it's like, great, it worked for like a year or two, and then it didn't. Right. So, I think honestly, the biggest thing is really just honoring the natural flow and timing of things, and tuning in enough to know those moments when, like, oh yeah, I really just need a rest. Like, I just need to go outside or hang out with a friend. And those moments when, you could just like read a good book about marketing and like learn some stuff, and then just, and be patient with yourself, and know that it's going to grow and evolve over time. Like anything that becomes mature over time, it takes trial and error. It's not going to all happen at once. It's not going to happen quickly, probably. There are exceptions to that. There's certainly exceptions. And I feel like I'm a relatively quick person. And I think I got to fairly sustainable after a year-ish. But like, that seems on the quicker side. And then honestly, like, I hit some chronic illness a couple of years ago. We talked about that. And like, that slowed me way down. And so there's also this piece that like life happens, right? And we have to continue. Life is messy. The weather's always changing. Like, we're on a path, we're doing something, and then lo and behold, whoa, something new comes in. There's a storm, there's a rainbow, and then we have to be able to adjust to that. We have to like not beat ourselves up because we didn't hit our goals for that quarter or that year. And we have to be able to just kind of go back to that North Star, to that vision, and just adjust course without blaming ourselves for screwing it up or something. Because like life happens. And my guess, like you and me, I'm guessing people that are listening are probably not in that mode of just being able to power through whatever and just make it happen anyways. And that's why we're in this conversation, and other coaches are having other conversations about how to, power up and get through anything. And I don't know, it doesn't work for me personally. So I just want to normalize that whole experience that people have in the beginning of business and ongoing,
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think it's really important for me. The life that happened was having a baby. I had a baby in early last year. And so for me, that was, something I had to adjust my expectations around what my business could do with, a newborn baby and all of that stuff. So, and I think it's really key. I mean, I talk a lot like you about vision and strategy, and, I'm a planner. That's my thing. And I like to put visions in place and have, you know, ambitious goals. But my big thing is, and I share this with all the women I talk to, you know, you've got to leave space for things to change, because when we become, you know, too fixated on things happening, like you say, in a certain time frame or in a certain way, you know, not only do we miss out on, you know, the beauty of nature and how it, you know, who knows what's going to happen next, but it causes us undue suffering. And I think what I see more than anything is, you know, when we beat ourselves up or we don't give ourselves permission to honor the ebb, what it does is it, over time, it has a negative impact on how we feel in our business. And that's more than anything, I think, the determinant of our success or our failure. You know? And so for me, I love your message, because everything that you shared is about honoring what is, and honoring ourselves and where we're at in any moment in our business. And I think that's more important than any strategy or sales funnel or, you know, consistency on Instagram or whatever it might be. How we feel and, you know, staying sane is, I think, you know, is the most important way we can. You use the word in your, I read it on your website today, sustainable. We can make it sustainable, because that's what I see. So many people are starting businesses. You know, we live in a time where it's so easy to do that, and it's wonderful. But then I see so many, you know, businesses disappear after months or a year because they haven't built in that sustainability. And that's what I really love about your message.
Yeah. Thank you. So right on. I'm 100%. Yeah. We're super aligned on this for sure.